Okay, now let's look. We have a chance to look back in the glass bowl now, looking back instead of a look toward the crystal ball of the future.
Right.
If you had known now what you know now about unemployment and you were in Congress a year and a half ago, would you have voted for the stimulus?
Well, let me say, first of all, in reference to the Bush administration, Pat was part of the Bush administration. So he was not a casual observer. He worked for George Bush during the years that they ran up that incredible debt.
Does the U.S. Attorney do the budget?
Well, it's the fact is you can't act like you're some stranger to the administration that had those kinds of policies. He was part of that administration.
And yet you've attacked him as being part of the Obama administration.
I came on.
You guys were attacking each other, and you weren't even in Congress.
I came on 4 days after September 11th as a prosecutor, dealing first with the issue of the new threat of terrorism, and then worked into the many challenges and threats that we faced as a country. And frankly, was appointed by that same president, but was on the corporate fraud task force that looked at the issue when we had the overreaching by virtue of what was on. And I'm the only one here who has taken on big corporations, who has taken on the big drug companies and others when they've overacted and held them accountable for their actions.
I see a lot of blame assessment on both sides for things you didn't do. I mean, you weren't in the Congress when the stimulus came. You weren't in you might have been in the Bush administration, but you didn't do the budget, which was way over the top.
Well, but he did do what he just referenced, which is it was during the Bush administration that the devil was set loose on Wall Street, that they were deregulated. Now, Pat was part of a task force that was assigned the job of putting together rules for prosecuting crimes in the financial sector. How did they do?
We want to defend yourself.
How did they do on that? How did they do during those 8 years?
To exactly what went on, which is, if you look what went on to Wall Street, what caused the meltdown was the activities that took place in the real estate industry. Now, went after the predatory lenders, and we have a record of a series of prosecutions of those who were committing those lending in Pennsylvania, all throughout the district. But the fact is that they were able to take those things and put those into those tranches, those investments that moved it beyond. Everybody kept handing the responsibility one level down to the next, and as a result, what you saw was once it got into Wall Street and they passed it on, we had the meltdown.
I'm trying to equalize this conversation, as you know. It's my impression that the voters really, honestly, this is my impression, that the voters are not interested in yesterday, they're interested in tomorrow. So both of you have dwelt in both of your campaigns day to day on yesterday and not tomorrow. Yesterday is not so far away, but the future is tomorrow. Just quickly, before we move on to our next subject, why do you believe that you are, and I'm going to ask each of you with you first, a better representative for the people's money?
Because I know what it's like to be out there working hard for a buck as a kid, working my way through. But I saw a guy the other day when I was out knocking on doors, and he said something to me that was really, really striking. He said, they've lost touch. People don't realize. They're talking about millions and billions of dollars, in fact, and I take Bryan to task for the fact of having voted for a budget last year in the state of Pennsylvania that was $1 billion higher than the year before. And the guy said, they'll spend $1 billion. They don't realize how hard I have to work for $100.
Okay, so go ahead.
So I think the point of it is that I have a sense. I know what it's like for people. I've worked with victims. I know what it's like for people to feel pain, and you can see it in the faces here too. It's a different issue, but it is the economy.
Now, why are you better?
Well, I know what it means to represent people, to look out for people. When I'm in the legislature, and if I go to Washington, I'll ask a very simple question before every vote. What does this do for the people of Delaware County, for the 7th District, for the people in Montgomery and Chester County? What does it do to improve their lives, to create jobs, to create an economically vibrant area? And if the answer is that it does something positive for them, then I'm going to support it. I had my first job out of college was as a rifle platoon leader in the 82nd Airborne Division. And I learned then what it means to be responsible for other people. And I've taken that with me. When I was a prosecutor here in Philadelphia, I knew what it was to be responsible for the victims of crime, and I've done that as a legislator. So people can trust that if they send me to Washington, I know who I'm representing, and I'm going to look over my shoulder and know the impact of the decisions I make, such as the $1 billion Pat refers to. Does he know that most of that increase in spending went into education to places like Upper Darby High School, which actively lobbied for it?
But the state has had budget crises for a couple of years.
Sure it has. Sure it has. Why? Because in this recession, which again didn't come onto us like a plague. You say don't look back, Larry, but one of the ways to know how to go forward is to look at the mistakes you've made. And Pat is recycling ideas that were the ideas of the Bush administration. Why would we want to go through that same course of action again?
Go ahead.
Well, Bryan is talking right now about it. It's suggesting that what he would do if he's in Washington, but I'm looking at what he did while he was in Harrisburg and talking about the vote with the impact on jobs, proposing the idea of the cap and trade legislation, which people right now would say would absolutely be a job killer for our district and our region. Voting for the $1 billion in new tax in expenditures and $500 million in new taxes, another job killing thing. The kinds of record up there, the real vote that's different than the rhetoric.
Well, I'm going to ask you guys in a minute about
I can respond to that there, Larry.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, first of all, the increase in spending, again, education. The all-Republican school board of Upper Darby High School lobbied us for that increase because they need it to provide a quality education. You know who pays if the state doesn't give Upper Darby that increase? The property taxpayer. And they can tell you, the senior citizens, how much their property taxes have gone up in recent years.
Yep.
My record, he says we've increased taxes. The only tax increased in the 3.5 years that I've been in Harrisburg was on tobacco. And I'm proud to have increased taxes on tobacco.
Just a quick 10 seconds, 10, 15 seconds, and we got to move on.
But it wasn't the votes that were for. But
You want to finish?
no, I mean, I was the only one that was maybe increased, but the fact that there were a number of votes that didn't get through because the Republicans in the legislature fought against the tax increases, which is why we need balance down in Washington right now. This is the fundamental argument that I'm making exclusively, so we can get back down into Washington, D.C., and at least have a chance to have two separate pieces like they had in Harrisburg, so that there wasn't one party that would just continue to push an agenda. We would have had $1 billion of extra spending if it was only one party rule in Washington.
We'll take a short break, and I got a question for you concerning maybe a little bit of a surprise, spending and Delaware County, when we return right after this with Pat Meehan and Bryan Lentz. First of all, congratulations to both of these candidates for agreeing to do this. It's hard to get candidates together. Let me tell you, you have no idea what aggravation goes into this, but these guys were just open and accepted right away, and we appreciate it. Pat Meehan, we're going to get to some quick issues here because I want to get all the issues in. The Defense Secretary said there's going to be major cuts in the Pentagon budget that could impact on Boeing, defense contractor in Delaware County, where a lot of people go to work. How does a congressperson or a political party get ready for this kind of possible impact?
Boy, you fight that on the merits. One of the things that you have to be so proud of is the work they're doing down there at Boeing, how they have saved that V-22 and how it's turned into be the kind of an instrument that's being used right now in the theater of war and is being accepted as one of the best instruments. They made that on merit, and the pride they take in the work they do. If they're going to make defense cuts, what you want to make sure is that the frivolous things that are out there, there probably needs to be investigation to that. I would love to go fight for Boeing down there in Washington because they sell their products on the merits and a workforce that is dedicated and great at what they do.
Do you agree with that?
Well, I flew on Chinooks when I was in the 82nd Airborne. I jumped out of them. I flew on them when I was in Iraq in 2004. And if I go to Washington, the first thing I'll do is ask to be put on the Armed Forces Committee, where I will say to the other members, I can tell you from firsthand experience the value of this aircraft and the value of the Osprey for moving soldiers in tough terrain.
I